What's up, everybody? It's Brandon from Box Office Banner and Cult Flick Symposium. I'm here to talk about Roadhouse. Yes, sir. I'm somebody that is a big fan of the original, but I'm also not like die hard. I have a weird relationship with the original. I used to be this weird stickler, even as somebody that loves like bad movies. Don't get me wrong, bad movies that are so bad they are good. Roadhouse has that wrote all over it. Just does. But there was something about it. I also was a stickler for those types of movies. You know, they would be like that, but it was Van Damme throwing a spin kick. It's people like that. When I saw Patrick Swayze doing it, I don't know if I was just caught up in my own personal biases, but I'd watch shit like that and I'd be like, I'd have those friends just like that wouldn't watch like Van Damme movies or something, but they love Roadhouse. I'm like, well, how are you going to be into this? He's throwing the spigot. He's not even as good. Stupid, probably like jealous bullshit. Whatever it was. I wouldn't allow myself to get into the movie at an early age, which as I got older, I've become far more objective. I take pride in that of myself, but we still all fall into biases, right? Let's be honest, we're imperfect in that regard, but I do try to find objectivity. And in doing so, that is why I was able to go back and watch a movie like Roadhouse again and absolutely love it now. The last like 3 viewings I've watched of it, I'm like, damn, I should have embraced this so much more when I was younger. It's not like I never, liked Patrick Swayze. I love almost everything he was in growing up. But for whatever reason, Roadhouse, I held like a weird grudge against it. I think everybody has these types of movies, and I encourage you to go back and watch them with fresh eyes and not do that. So that is basically where I'm at with the first Roadhouse. Love it now, didn't then. But it still became somewhat of a sacred property to me because even though I didn't appreciate it when I was young, I'm sounding like I'm speaking Chinese now, right? I still find this just like childhood love for it because I do love it now and it fits within the essence of the movies I loved as a kid. And I feel like I owe it that love because of all the times I neglected it. So I do love the first Roadhouse with that impact, how I felt about the new Roadhouse. I don't understand it, guys. I don't get the hate for this movie. Now, don't get me wrong. There's this fair share of like, yeah, it was pretty good. I'm not seeing too many, that was fucking great. What a remake. Oh. But there's a lot of people that are just, that's the worst movie I've ever seen. Like, really? Really? And I get it. Objectively, it might be a little bad, but that's what it's going for, right? But like, objectively, the original Roadhouse, if we're playing the objective game, is pretty fucking terrible. Like the dialogue is like, really, you're gonna fucking do that? You did that? Okay, okay, all right, buddy. You could do that same type of analysis with that. Now it's a difference so bad it's good, but it's still self-aware to me. I heard a few people say it was like, this is one obviously I've seen some reviews on before I reviewed it. I try not to do that, but it definitely happens. I don't let it impact how I feel about a movie, obviously, because I'm defending it right now. But I've seen a lot of people too, just like not a lot, but I heard like 2 or 3 people, let's say that, because this is just lived rent free on my timeline since I watched it 2 days ago. It's like they hear something or, hey, the government just saw you watch Roadhouse. Check this out. It's gonna be all over your timeline. It's like one of those type of things where maybe it came on while I was driving. One time I was watching something on YouTube and it was the next video that popped up, whatever. And a couple of these videos I've heard people say, no, it's actually pretty dead ass serious. I'm like, man, are you taking it that way? Because I'm not. Did y'all take it that way? If you've seen it, write down in the comments below. I think this movie, it's not quite as goofy as the original Roadhouse, where you could just, it's so bad it's good. That just works better in the early days anyways, let's be honest. But this new Roadhouse definitely doesn't play itself too seriously. I wouldn't say that at all. I think all the jokes and the comedy that's in the movie, because there's a lot of comedy in the movie, honestly. It's not like flat out like, comedic guy on stage, but they'll add in those little tidbits like you see in other action movies where it's refreshing. It's good. It keeps the light tone, which is crucial, I think, to this movie. All while trying to be its own thing to where it's not flat out copying. And let me mind you, think about Jake Gyllenhaal. I mean, he did Donnie Darko with Patrick Swayze. And to my knowledge, he's close with him. He wanted to give a good rendition. I think everybody's hearts and everything was in the right place here. Now, in saying that, I'm not saying this is an amazing movie. I'm just because I was like, I haven't seen anybody say it's amazing yet. I'm of the camp that, yeah, it's really good. Because this movie does have its problems. There's no doubt about it. I don't think it's in the execution. I think they did everything right in that regard of what they were going for. So actually, I should kind of rewind that. It is the execution. I think Conor McGregor, like what they were going for is on point, but there's certain things in the movie maybe dialed up too much, doesn't work in this day and age, or maybe again that word execution that I'm flipping on its head now. It wasn't quite there. Like Conor McGregor, I think he was solid enough to start off the movie. He's somebody I've seen that's been the opposite of like, some people say this is good but not great. I've seen people say Conor McGregor was awesome in this movie, amazing. He was like the one person that made it. But I've also seen people say, holy shit, this guy can't act. I'll give you that. He basically played himself, dialed up to 1,000,000, which is hard to do because Conor McGregor, at least when it's fight night or he's fucking trying to get everybody hyped up for these UFC fights he's in, is dialing it up, right? He dials it up even more so here. It's ridiculous. And it works. It fits. It's perfect for this type of movie. But in saying that, it did wear on me. I don't know if maybe he just had like a few too many scenes. If the people that love McGregor in this is like, get him in the movie more. Maybe he was better served as like, because it takes a while, admittedly, for him to get in the movie. But once he is in there, he's in it pretty constant. It seems like every other scene, he's popping up, strutting around. But at the same time, it's like, do we need as many scenes of him just do his overly like, hey, I'm jacked walk, and just like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, doing these stupid like quips that are funny and they work, but sometimes more isn't better. Like maybe it's better in doses. And I think that would have helped McGregor here because there's moments I really enjoyed him, but by the end of the movie, I was like, God damn, dude. Like this little trope of smirking and just wandering into shit like, and I'll fuck you up, got old after a while. It did like it's one of those like know who you are type of thing, which really isn't his job, but like know your clientele, know how to play them up to their strengths. I think they did do that here, but again, doses I think would have been better. I don't think we needed him in the movie as much as we got. He'd have been better, I think, for 2 or 3 scenes instead of all the scenes he popped up in, and then he's at the very end, and you're kind of like, instead of him coming into the last scene where you're like, all right, let's see the final fight. This McGregor, you crazy fuck. All right, you've overdone it a little bit in this movie. Instead, you have like, he was kind of funny in those couple scenes. It's like, okay, now let's see some action, and you're more welcoming to it. I think it hurt the overall product how much he was in the movie. Y'all might completely disagree, but I think dial him back, not a little bit in performance, but dial him back as in how many scenes he's in. And tell you what, movie's 124 minutes long. You cut out a few scenes, you're getting a little close to that 90-minute mark, which, is probably a little more suitable. I think Roadhouse in general, just the title here, I'm not as mad about it as I've heard some people. I think it works, but I do think they should have gave a little more to the Roadhouse. It kind of starts out where the Roadhouse seems essential, but it really is just a launch pad to send Jake Gyllenhaal and fucking Conor McGregor for this main event. Like, which that is important. It's the main event of the movie. You want the end fight to have merits, but it feels like the Roadhouse kind of takes a back seat. It would have been better if it kind of authentically played up where it felt like more of Dalton, which is Jake Gyllenhaal's character, just like fucking Swayze's name in the first one. Dalton kind of really helped build this Roadhouse up, and it focused deeper into what the Roadhouse was and the relationships and the bonds and everything, all cultivating. And him having that moment with McGregor, just like, you want to fuck with them? No, you fuck with me. Like, there wasn't as much of an attachment to the Roadhouse, which I think kind of hurt the movie in spots. And again, like I said, the length, I think it was a little too long. And overall, everybody in the movie, something that held it back for me, because I did have a higher score, but, Jake Gyllenhaal, he's my second favorite working actor. Love the dude, he can do no wrong. No difference here. He did an amazing job, with the character of Dalton. Elwood Dalton, fucking great character. I loved him. He was rootable. The way he treated the character, I'm not even going to say the type of character he is in the movie, but all the, little intricacies of who his character is, if he's like really violent, if he's not, only violent when he has to be, whatever you want to read into that. I love the way they do his character. I love that type of action hero in a movie. So who doesn't? Okay? When you see what I'm talking about, I think you can at least agree, because one thing I have heard is even the people that hate it are like, Jake Gyllenhaal did a good job. But I did find myself, though, looking around at everything else, I was like, man, that was a pretty great time overall. But I did find myself saying, take Gyllenhaal out of the movie. What do we have? And the movie, sometimes, you could be like, oh, well, you can't take Gyllenhaal, and then it's not Roadhouse, right? Like, well, he's in the movie, so why would you take him out? It's like, yeah, but sometimes when you don't focus on the soul thing, that you're just like, oh my God, I'm in love with this portion of the film, it can really help you kind of dive into like weaker areas across the board. But when I did that, I thought about how much Jake Gyllenhaal is just a rootable character and things of that nature. I found myself looking around at everybody else. I'm just like, the rest of the cast is very blah. Other than McGregor, he at least livens it up. The other villain in the movie that's, calling the shots and shit, that guy's, I can't fucking get into him at all. He was just a whiny bitch to me. Couldn't get into him at all. But McGregor, even though there's moments, because like, oh, it's funny, Conor McGregor, again, dialed up a little too much. So overall, Gyllenhaal really, I think, saves it. And then the fight scenes, I've got a love-hate with these. There's some CGI in the fight scenes. I saw Scott Adkins call this out. I don't think it was as prevalent, or at least that I saw. Maybe I'm fucking slipping, people. I don't like CGI. I'm a big fan of martial arts and shit, so I like my fights to look a certain way. I can be, picky about this kind of thing. But I don't think it was as bad as some people let on. There's definitely a bit of it, and it's like, why? Do without it. But one thing I can say about the fights, they weren't terrible. They didn't look as bad as I've seen a lot of the fights I complain about in American films. In fact, as far as like an American film movie that has fight scenes in it, it's probably, more upper echelon, as crazy as that is to say. And I think a lot of it has to do with like unique angles they took with the fight. It felt like they were always coming at you from different directions, what kind of kept you like off beat a little bit too, which was fun. It kind of mixed it up. And the impact, the blows, you feel like you felt them. You feel like you were there. You're like, oh shit, he got popped. So there's definitely elements to that. And I think overall, the big showdown, Conor McGregor and Jake Gyllenhaal, was pretty good. I was in there. I liked that shit. So overall, in general, guys, this is not a movie without flaws. A movie like this is going to have almost purposeful flaws because of how goofy it is. It's not as flat out goofy as maybe even the original is, but in narrative, like where you're like, really? That just happened? But you suspend your belief a little bit because it is a Roadhouse movie. It does carry some of the charm that the original had, just in different ways, but ways I think that work better for nowadays movies. I always say like the 80s and shit like that. That's the action, juggernaut era for me, early 90s, shit like that. But a lot of that stuff just doesn't, for whatever reason, quite work as well nowadays. But this one does a pretty good enough job to kind of, dip back into that, which is really hard to do. So I got to give it props for that at least. And Jake Gyllenhaal definitely saves the movie. McGregor is good in spots. I'll give him that. But overall is dialed up a little too much. And other than that, everybody else is just kind of eh. So it's a tough one to rate. But at the end of the day, I left this movie not feeling like I've seen a lot of people just hating it. I've had a lot of fucking fun despite its flaws. This movie was a lot of fucking fun to me. I got to be a little bit of a defender here. I think Roadhouse was solid as fuck. I'm going to give it a 7.5 out of 10. Love you guys.